So I think it's pretty safe to say that for every accusation we hear from an elected Republican, we can count on it being a confession. And we know this because they've been claiming that Biden is the most corrupt president that we've ever seen. But it was Donald Trump who was convicted of 34 felonies for paying hush money to a porn star as a means to meddle in the 2016 election. They also claim that conservatives are being targeted by a weaponized government. But it's actually Jim Jordan who is out there suing universities and disinformation research agencies because they don't like people going against their false narratives. And they also try to say that Biden is going after his political opponents, but they haven't provided any evidence of that. But we know for a fact that Donald Trump tried to go after Biden before he was even elected because he was Trump's political enemy. He tried to go after Obama. He tried to go after Hillary. But luckily, his DOJ didn't play along. And he doesn't just get a pass for that. These are things he tried to do. And look no further than fake news. This term came onto the scene in 2015, came into the public zeitgeist, because Trump would slander any media organization that he found too critical of him. But now it seems that mainstream conservatives are the biggest purveyors of disinformation. And they've kicked it into overdrive for this 2024 election season. We are now being berated by a slew of clips that take Joe Biden out of context, deceptively edited, cropped all weird, all to further their narrative that Joe Biden is a doddering old man who can't tell up from down, who wanders off at odd times. But this is disingenuous. So today we're going to look at a few examples of these deceptively edited or cropped or taken out of context clips so we can better understand why they're trying to do this. So let's go ahead and kick things off with Biden shaking hands with the air. Shaking hands with the air, I think, is the narrative they wanted on this one. This was after he was done speaking at the North Carolina A&T University, and he turns around, and we'll just have to see what's next.
American manufacturing is coming back. Once again, we're seeing the pride that comes from stamping a product made in America. Companies are choosing to build their new factories here in America. Just a few years ago.
So as you can see there, they're trying to say that it was Biden being confused. But if we take a step back or look at different camera angles, we know that's not the case. Because there's a stage on either side of Biden behind him. And when he got done with his speech, he turned around to acknowledge the people behind him. This isn't very controversial. But they want to edit things to further their narrative that Biden is a confused old man. So let's go ahead and take a look at a different angle.
Growing. There's not a single thing America can't do when we do it together as the United States of America. God bless you all.
So as you can see there's a stage on his right, and I don't know if they show the stage on the left. He's clearly acknowledged the people on his right and left, and now he walks off the stage. I don't think there's anything too controversial about this. But instead of providing the full context, or just not running this story altogether, because there's actually nothing that weird about it, you have somewhat reputable news sources running with this narrative. It's pretty insane to me, and quite disappointing. We have news organizations, or so-called news organizations, like the New York Post, that are bundling these false narratives into little packages and shooting them out into the ether. And then they get shared and reshared. Millions and millions and millions of views. All in an effort to get Trump reelected in 2024. It's quite pathetic. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. We've got the imaginary chair, or some even claimed that it was Biden crapping in his pants. So let's go ahead and take a look at that one.
I don't know, let's just say he tried to sit down on a chair that was not there and call that the most charitable explanation.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable...
But, you know, you can see how sharp and on the ball he is behind closed doors.
So this is another one of those things where something is taken out of context. You don't see the before, you don't see the after. You don't see Joe Biden actually sitting down in a chair that actually existed right behind him. And instead you're spinning these false narratives because it furthers your agenda. But if we go ahead and look at a different angle, or we can see Biden walking to the stage, and you can actually see a chair that he intends to sit in, and then he misjudges the announcer's timing, I guess is how you would put it. He's clearly waiting to sit down, but then the announcer starts to speak again, and he's trying to be respectful and not sit down. It's really not that controversial, but here we go. So you can see the chair there, right next to the person in white.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III, Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
And then they sit down. Again, not that controversial. But we have people like Sky News, New York Post, whipping these stories up, taking things out of context to further their political agenda. It's dishonest. It's disgusting. News organizations should have better critiques than this. Why aren't there any better critiques than this? Is this really all they have to critique Biden on? Is to try to make him look like a doddering old man? You would expect the criticisms to be a bit more substantive. But if this is all they got, I mean, how does that speak to Biden? I think that puts him in a better light. So instead, they do this. They take things out of context and they shoot it all around the internet and everybody picks it up and runs with it. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this one. This is Biden at the G7 summit, and people are trying to claim that he wandered off just randomly. So let's go ahead and take a look at that one really quick. So if you were only seeing this portion of the video, maybe it would look a little weird. It does look like Biden is wandering off, but we know that's not the case. And New York Post even went a step further and cropped this video differently to make it look even worse for Biden. Let's take a look at that. So this is cropped super strange, super vertical. to make it look even more weird. They're clearly putting in the effort to spin such a narrative for Biden that people go into the election booth in November and vote for Trump because they don't feel that Biden can carry out the job because he's such a weak, frail old man. It's quite frustrating. And I think we need to be diligent, as time-consuming as this is, to go through all of these things. I think it's important that somebody is on the other end of this, calling out these new news organizations for doing these deceptive things and making sure that the truth somehow gets out there. And New York Post even ran with this on, I think it was a front page cover. We could look at that. Meander in chief. Biden embarrasses U.S. with confused wanderings at World Conference. I mean, what is this? We should definitely be expecting better out of the New York Post. I mean, I don't ever get my news from them because, unfortunately, they publish stuff like this. But even their conservative viewers should be asking for better. Why are you spinning such deceptive narratives when there is clearly other news that you can report on? It just does not make a whole lot of sense to me. We should definitely be expecting more from our publications. The next video I wanted to look at was a different angle of the same event. And it shows that Biden is acknowledging three other skydivers that recently landed on the ground. And so it puts into context that Biden is actually being respectful to those behind him again, and he's not just wandering off in such a weird way.
Different angle from that event after a skydiver landed in front of the president and other leaders. President Biden turns to his left where there are troops. The president appears to say something to them and give them the thumbs up before he's tapped on the arm by the Italian prime minister. So this is the kind of thing that gets amplified. You have an organization like the New York Post, many others that picked it up that way, delivered to them right from Trump's campaign with no context, no double checking it, no looking at very widely available different angles to tell the truth.
We can go ahead and stop it there. But she's exactly right. I don't know if she's right about Trump's campaign spinning these narratives directly for the New York Post. I haven't been shown any evidence that that is the case. But his campaign is definitely amplifying this message that Biden is a doddering old man because it will help Trump in November. But we need to be expecting more. We should be expecting more out of our news publications. And I would say the same thing if it were the New York Times, MSNBC. I would call it out then as well. And it's important to do so because we need a general basis of truth, a shared truth that we can all work from. Facts are not negotiable. They are facts. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next one, where Biden was at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, and people tried to say that he just froze on stage, and then Obama had to come get him because he didn't know what was happening. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Watch here as Barack Obama grabs Biden's arm and helps direct the confused POTUS off stage.
So as you can tell there, you don't see what happened before that. You don't necessarily need to see what happened after that. But the whole point of editing it like this is to make it look like Biden is confused. He froze on stage during a fundraiser. Oh my goodness, he's not fit for office. That is the narrative they are hoping to drive. So we got to be here calling it out every step of the way. It's important that people understand the truth, and especially with how quickly things are spread on social media, it's so easy to get a false perception of reality when you're watching videos like this that are heavily cropped, slightly edited, out of context. It's important that we step back, and if something looks odd, maybe we should be investigating further the claims that are supposedly being made. That is the approach that I take. If I see something that looks super weird with Joe Biden freezing on stage, I immediately go search for the fuller video so I can see what happened before, I can see what happened after, and I can make my own judgment as to what actually happened. So let's go ahead and look at a fuller clip as Joe Biden is leaving the stage during this LA fundraiser. You will clearly see that he's waving to the crowd, he's acknowledging people, and then he kind of takes in the applause for a couple seconds, and Obama taps him on the shoulder. Nothing too strange about what we're going to see here.
And omits the part right before it where he waves to the crowd, gives him the thumbs up, and then after he stands still, you see Obama briefly take him by the arm, and then put his hand on his back, and they both leave the stage together. Clips like this have followed Biden throughout his presidency.
She's absolutely correct about that. These clips are following Biden, and I think they are giving people a tainted view of our commander-in-chief. I think this is super damaging to Biden's reputation. I think it's super damaging to people's perceptions of him. And that's why we need to be here every step of the way calling this crap out. Because I do believe it's unacceptable. You can disagree with Biden all you want, but tell me your disagreements on the substance. It's low-hanging fruit for you to take things out of context and to package these little disinformation tidbits and send them into the ether. I would much rather substantive critiques of the things that you disagree with Biden about. Maybe you don't like his student loan forgiveness. Maybe you don't like the way he's handled the Gaza-Israel situation. Those are the types of criticisms that I would prefer to see. And we should always remember, too, we don't have any whistleblowers coming out of the White House saying that Biden is an old man who doesn't know where he's at. We haven't seen any of those. And there are, thousands of people who come into contact with the White House throughout the year, and not one of them has came out and said, ooh, that didn't look good for Biden. Biden didn't remember my name. Biden didn't remember this. Biden didn't remember that. We haven't heard any of that. The only time we hear these narratives is from people who are motivated for people to vote for Trump in November, like Kevin McCarthy and Mike Johnson. We haven't had any substantive stories pushed out about Biden, about his mental acuity. And I'm not saying that Biden isn't old. He certainly is. He talks softly sometimes. Sometimes he stumbles over his words. He also has a stutter that he's had his whole life. And that probably is contributing to that as well. All of this is to say that conservatives have been calling any mainstream news outlet fake news at least since 2015, but it now seems like they are the ones pushing out the majority of the disinformation that we are seeing online, and these deceptive stories are making it far and wide, and it is behoove us to slow down. If something looks weird, maybe we should investigate a little bit further. Because it's important that we let facts shape our perception of what is going on around us. I think that is super important. So that's going to do it for me on this one, folks. If you got anything out of this video, if you could remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe, maybe share it with a friend or two, I'd very much appreciate that. If you think I got something wrong, or if you disagree with me about something, let's hash it out in the comments below. And if you want to see why I think Trump is just a wannabe mob boss, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. And I will see you guys on the next one.